Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are about to get started with the webinar in just a few moments, but first I wanted to make a few introductions and some announcements. My name is Ari Kornhaber. I'm a former plaintiff's personal injury and mass tort trial lawyer, and I'm one of the founders of Esquire Bank. Today, I will be serving as your moderator for this webinar discussion, and today we will be covering Google search marketing best practices, fireside chat with Taylor Rayfield and Chris Dreyer. Our guest speakers today are Taylor Rayfield, a partner at the law firm of Manley, Stewart, and Finaldi, along with Chris Dreyer, the founder and CEO of Rankings.io. Taylor Rayfield is a seasoned trial lawyer who has dedicated her practice to championing the rights of survivors, obtaining substantial trial verdicts and settlements in the process, and has had quite the career. And before joining Manley, Stewart, and Finaldi, Taylor made a name for herself by obtaining incredible results on behalf of victims across a wide range of areas, including sexual assault and many times in difficult cases against considerable adversaries. That was the bio that was submitted, but it doesn't do Taylor justice. So I just want to highlight a couple of her other significant successes, just to point out a few, because she really is a champion for justice. Taylor had a successful $2.6 million settlement arising out of a motor vehicle accident against an employer. She was able to, use her litigation skills and use the going and coming rule, real litigation skills. Another champion cause here, she was able to obtain a $1.65 million result for a student wrestler who was abused by his coach. Even more important than that result, that led to 30 other victims having a platform to come forward. Because of that, the Consumer Attorneys of California awarded Taylor with the 2018 Street Fighter of the Year award for her work on this matter. Taylor also obtained a $22 million verdict in a skiing accident, a $6.3 million settlement for a burn victim that uncovered 23 other similar burn injuries. And most recently, last month, Taylor and her law firm obtained an $852 million global settlement in the USC sex abuse case. This is the largest sex abuse settlement against any university and the largest personal injury settlement against any college or university in history. Taylor's firm represented the largest number of women in this case, over 230, and they were co-liaison counsel for all of the women who were part of this litigation. So, Taylor, it's an honor to have you on the panel today. Also with us, again, is Chris Dreyer, the CEO and founder of Rankings.io, an agency that specializes in personal injury lawyer SEO. His agency ranks personal injury law firms for the most lucrative keywords in your industry, with end-to-end SEO, from content creation to technical optimization. And again, while that was the bio that was presented, a couple of other highlights that I wanted to point out. Rankings.io helps elite personal injury law firms dominate first page rankings. First page nationwide for car accident lawyer. There's firms that have said the following. One firm's volume has tripled as a result of Chris's and his company's efforts. Another law firm doubled their leads and increased organic traffic by 3,400%. Another firm said that visits to their website and conversions have doubled. And finally, one said that there was a 400% increase in clients year over year. So again, Chris, an honor to have you here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the presence of greatness. Lastly, I really want to take a moment to thank our co-sponsors for today's webinar, the Consumer Attorneys of California, CAOC. Thank you for your support, and thank you for your business partnership. We are such a grateful business partner of CAOC that we decided to invest in the future. So if you, California attorneys who are here today or are going to be watching the video later on, know of any law school graduates who are considering joining CAOC, their first year's dues are going to be on Esquire Bank. We'd love to continue to pay for first-time members of CAOC and invest in the future of our industry. So that wraps up our housekeeping items. Let's get into it. Taylor, let's start with you, if you don't mind. Can you just share with the audience a little bit about your journey and what led you here today, please?
Sure. Yeah. So, I started really my baby lawyer career over at Green Burlett and Wheeler, and then recently came over to Manley Stewart Frinaldi as a partner over here in January. And, what's relevant to this topic today is being a lawyer who's growing up during these times and trying to understand financially how we're going to succeed. You're seeing these massive advertisers out there with TV ads, and then you're seeing social media. I mean, what is it, Sprinkles Cupcakes? Like, they did their entire advertising career of non-paid advertising through social media. I mean, there's so many different aspects out there of how am I and my firm going to differentiate ourselves, and how are we going to tap into finding clients. And so because of that, I've had to do research into this and trying to figure out what is the best way for us to do our advertising based on, depending on what firm I'm with, depending on what it is that I'm trying to advertise and trying to gain. Because I mean, unless you're going to be a billboarder, there's really so many different ways to advertise and to promote and to get cases. And I don't think, and Chris and I will dive into this definitely a little bit further, but I don't think you can just say, this is all I'm going to do. I think you have to look at what cases that you're trying to bring in the door, what locations, what targets you're trying to make. And I think, you need to have a wide strategy. And so that's kind of where I ended up learning more about this than I've ever wanted to know. Us as lawyers, we always joke that we know more than just law, and that's what's happened here. But it's people like Chris that sit down and talk with you to help you understand, what does it mean? When I heard the term SEO, I was like, I don't understand. Like, this makes no sense to me. And so that's why, like, I'm pumped to be here with Aria and Chris, because I think they're both such amazing people that they're in it to make us better and to make us successful. And so they're willing to have those conversations with you and answer your questions, so that you can truly have a full understanding of where it's worth it to put your money and what to spend your money with. So thank you all so much for having me here today.
Wonderful. And Chris, same question for you. Maybe you could just start with giving us a little bit about your background and a little bit about your journey, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. The first thing is, I went to college without knowing what I wanted to be. I told my parents that I was going to be a business owner, and they insisted on me going to college. I ended up with a history education degree, and I got a job at a local high school, and I was Googling how to make money online, probably the worst query possible because of all the distractions out there. But I took a 30-day challenge to learn digital marketing. And by the end of it, I think I made like $10 through affiliate marketing, but it gave me the basis of knowledge to kind of pursue this career. And by the end of my second year, I was doing substantially better through internet marketing than I was teaching. And I pursued that full time. Fast forward many, many years ahead, in 2013, I launched an agency, and we kind of did everything at once at the beginning, kind of did a full service. I do full service. I use that term loosely because full service isn't always true, right? In the beginning, you need to hustle to kind of take on whatever projects you can, but we really found a niche, and that was SEO. But what's interesting about what Taylor said is, because I've been in the mix and work with many law firms, I've got to see many different attorneys succeed using different forms of advertising, whether it's pay-per-click or now the local service ads or billboards or TV or radio. And I'm very open to a good conversation. I'm probably transparent to a fault. And I am a firm believer that SEO is not for everyone. It is for certain individuals, but there are many different factors that go into all different marketing choices, and to decide which is the right path for your specific firm. and particularly if it's B2C or B2B and all those types of factors. But just looking forward to the conversation, and thanks for having me.
Wonderful. I'm going to pick up on something you just said, and I want to acknowledge and thank the registrants for submitting questions ahead of time. It really helps drive the conversation and hopefully bring valuable information and education to those in attendance. So one of our audience members asked, what are some tangible best practices for SEO marketing? Chris, maybe you could just launch us from there.
Some of the basics, you need to have a website. I think the best content management system is the WordPress content management system. I know there's many agencies out there that kind of do their own proprietary thing. I know that word in itself, content management system, is a little bit scary, but really WordPress is probably the most intuitive platform. You need to have a solid website, because no matter if you do referral marketing or billboards or TV, at the end of the day, they're probably going to pick up their mobile device. And I'd imagine that almost everyone on this call has it within arm's reach, and they're going to go try to find you on the web. So you need to have a good website. Some of the basics, you need to have your sales pages, which are essentially your practice area pages. So if you're doing motor vehicle accidents, you need a car accident page. You need a truck accident page. If you're doing maritime, you need maritime. So basically highlighting what you do. And then you need to also show your expertise. You need to show why they should hire you over the plethora, all the mass amount of choices out there. So concentrating on reviews and your reputation, the associations you're affiliated with, where you're, if you're doing thought leadership of any kind. But the basics are: have a website, have your core practice areas on the website, try to highlight your why they should choose you, your expertise, your unique selling proposition. Those are some of the really basics, and I could go up a level from there, but that's the foundation.
But Chris, I was going to say, Chris, okay, for those of us who, aren't in your world and don't speak your language, when you say SEO, what does that even mean? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, SEO is search engine optimization. It's essentially trying to get the words and phrases that consumer type into Google for your website to appear on the first page of Google. That's the goal. It's to rank in those top positions. Now, let's define what those positions are. At the very top, you have local service ads. Those are the new ads with individuals' faces. Next, you have Google ads. That's where you pay for traffic. That's why it's referred to as pay-per-click. That's Google ads. Below that is where you start getting into Google organic. And the first position is the local maps. It's also referred to as local SEO. That's where you see the reviews. And then below that is organic. So there's a lot of different areas to advertise on the first page of Google, but essentially when we're referring to SEO, it's the organic strategies that you take to show up on the first page, not paying for the traffic or buying that placement, but the organic natural strategies.
And so that's why you're saying that by having a good website that has those landing pages, that has, what you do, that has, your big verdicts or settlements or whatever it is so important, because that will then trigger when someone searches, car accident lawyer or, abuse by Dr. Heaps or whatever it may be, then that will then in your Google search, after you go below all those levels, it'll then come up to your landing page on your website. So it directly pulls you to it.
Absolutely. Now, the level of competition per practice area is extremely different. If we're talking about ranking for Los Angeles car accident lawyer, it's very, very competitive. There's just a sea of competition. But if we're talking about Los Angeles elder care attorney or nursing home negligence and some of these other narrower areas, then the competition's not as steep. And that's where I say, that's what I mean by SEO is not for everyone, because sometimes the level of investment, even from an SEO side, can be extremely hard to enter. And you have to create a unique strategy to show up and using those types of tactics. But yeah, that's the basics of it. If you want to rank for any particular keyword or phrase, you have to have a landing page on your site dedicated to that.
Taylor, maybe you could talk about your law firm's website and how has your website and SEO strategy attracted new cases for your firm and your specialty?
Yeah. So we are working on our website since that I came over, because it's hard. It's hard for us lawyers because we're not focused on our websites. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're focused on being in the courtroom, taking the deposition, settling the cases. So the last thing that most of us are thinking about in our brain is, okay, now let me make sure the website is up to date with, our new awards that we got, or, our new super lawyers 2020, or, what, I mean, who thinks about that? Half the time you're deleting the emails because you need to clean out your inbox. And, it is really important for us. And we are working on it to try to be, higher in the searches. But it's like what Chris said, what sounds weird is it also depends on where your offices are located. So, and Google pulls from that. So, like, for example, when I was at Green, Burlett and Wheeler, our office was in Santa Monica, even though we were in Los Angeles County. So it messed up when people would search Los Angeles attorney or whatever, we wouldn't always get pulled in that. And so it can be really difficult to work on those kind of issues and figure that out. And for us, again, because we do sex abuse down in Orange County and we've got some of these really large cases, we have been very successful. But I'll tell you what, the other day I went on because I had gotten an email from someone and I didn't recognize who they were. And I Googled them. And the first thing that came up was the lawsuit against Dr. Heaps, the UCLA sex abuse lawsuit, which we're leading. And I know they have no involvement in that case whatsoever. And they don't have a single plaintiff in that case. And I will tell you, that's like a dagger to the heart, because you're like, this is so not fair. Like, you don't even do these cases, And it's funny, they were asking me a question about sex abuse. So I knew they didn't know those cases, but that's just an example of what Chris is talking about. Of it depends on what you want to pay for, and what kind of traffic you're trying to drive. And that's when I think we do a lot of different things. So we don't only depend on an organic search through Google. And Chris, something that I know that's been brought up to us a lot. And again, it's something, you settle the case, you move on, you pay your client, everyone hugs each other and goes, the opposite direction. A lot of times you don't hand your client a check like, here's $2 million. Will you now go write me a review on Google or on Gmail or on Yelp or whatever it is? And like, Chris, why is that? I mean, why does that drive, like, what difference does that make for them to write those reviews?
That is a great question. And it comes back to the core foundation of Google's algorithm. Google determines local search by relevance. So does their intent match the website? Distance, that's where you're going with the office address location. And then prominence. How Google defines prominence is through content, links, and reviews. Not only review the count and the score. And just the word prominence itself means being everywhere. So you need to have a lot of press mentions. You need to be in directories. You need to have a lot of content just everywhere so Google can recognize that you're a real firm and that you're relevant to this person's query. The other thing is that most people don't take into consideration, it's just the type of practice that your firm is. If you're a settlement firm and you're taking these soft tissue, super bottom level cases, you're going to get a ton of volume, a ton of reps to get these reviews. Where if you're just very selective with the cases that you take on and you aren't signing a ton of cases, you're not going to have a lot of review opportunities. So unfortunately, that's one of the drawbacks of the firms that have been around for a long time, that have these heavy hitting trial attorneys that maybe don't take the volume that a settlement mill, so to speak. That's a drawback, and that has to be taken into consideration when you're going to do an SEO strategy. The other thing is the score itself. So obviously advertising ethics are different by state. And in some states, you can use the superlative phrases a little bit more freely than others. But you would want to rank for best attorney near me, top attorney, expert attorney. And the way to do that is just to get 5-star reviews. It's the same thing. Imagine if you were on vacation and you wanted to eat at a restaurant. You've never been there. You don't know what's around. You type best restaurants near me. You wouldn't expect to see all the 1-star restaurants pop up. You'd expect to see the 5 stars. And it's the same for the legal vertical. And that's why reviews are critical. And it's unfortunate that the volume aspect is a component of their algorithm.
Doesn't it make a difference too where the review is done? Like if it's a Yelp versus a Google versus like a Facebook, doesn't that make a difference too?
That's another great question. That's one I don't get heard often. Yes, it does. And Google's organic algorithm has 200 to 300 signals. Who knows how many signals they have to evaluate if a page should rank. Well, their local algorithm isn't just going to look at Google's reviews. That wouldn't make any sense at all. They're going to crawl Facebook and Yelp and Better Business Bureau and Avvo and the legal directories. They're going to crawl all of that to really figure out, if this firm is legitimate.
So, Chris, a question just came in through the Q&A from one of our attendees. Do you agree that SEO is still primarily local in the eyes of Google?
Yes and no. Local shows up for almost all of the bottom of the funnel queries. So anytime someone types location plus their practice area and lawyer, so Los Angeles car accident lawyer, you're going to see maps every single time for those phrases that encompass X plus lawyer. But when you go up on the funnel, right, you've got know, like, trust, or top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of the funnel. Those top of funnel searches that are questions don't always trigger the maps. So it's a combination of both. And in order to do a rounded, a very strategic SEO strategy, you have to create content around all areas of the funnel. The awareness type of content, the content in the middle of the funnel that answers and questions, that highlights your expertise, and then the bottom of the funnel, which is the ask, those higher intent type of phrases.
So before we leave the topic of online reviews and their importance, maybe Taylor, you could speak to how much attention does your firm pay to online reviews, and what do you do? How do you deal with a negative review?
So great question. I honestly don't know the answer to that because I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out where our reviews go here. That is something that we're working on because I do think it's very important. If we were to get a negative review, I mean, unfortunately, in the legal business, I think we would just have to see what it said. And I mean, what was if it's, look, we've all had people that, money comes in the door and now they're pissed off because they think they should have gotten more, or, they didn't like the way an allocator allocated the money out, or they were upset because they sent us an email at 2 p.m. and we didn't respond to it by 2:15 p.m. So you just don't know. And I don't know, maybe Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not a restaurant. I'm not a hotel. I'm like, for us, like there's very specialized people that are coming, like specialized cases that are coming to us. And, I'm just not sure if it's worth a response sometimes. And anyone who's ever used reviews for travel or for restaurants, you can kind of read the review and look at it and be like, oh, this person might have had some crazy expectations. You know what I mean? Like when I walked into the hotel, they didn't greet me with a glass of champagne and wash my feet in, a pearly fountain, and you're kind of like, all right, well, you stayed at a Courtyard by Marriott, like not sure what you thought was going to happen. Like, so I'm not sure if it would be worth the response because especially as lawyers, like if they're represented by somebody else at that point and I respond to them, it just seems too dangerous. I don't know. Maybe Chris, you might disagree, but.
So I take a little different approach. And just by the nature of being in business, no matter how well we try to help someone out, sometimes you get the crazies and you're going to get a negative review. And in my opinion, responding to a review is not for the person. It's not to defend your position. It's for everyone else that may read it. So it's did they show empathy dealing with this person that was upset? How did they respond? Because the other people who are going to hire you in the future are going to read it. And a lot of times, one of the biggest situations we see negative reviews come in is, so say you are a very specialized firm and you only take a certain type of case, and a consumer comes to you and you don't take their case. And that situation, that first moment where they speak to the intake person, if you don't hand them off to someone else and really try to help and provide them value, they could leave a review just because a negative review because you didn't take the case. Now, there are things that you can do to get these negative reviews taken down. If, for example, and this is one that's not very well known, but it is very powerful, is if this person leaves a negative review at multiple Google My Businesses you own. Let's say you have a main headquarters and you have another location, and they leave a negative review at both. You can report that because they didn't have a client experience at both locations, and Google will remove both if that's the situation. It's very powerful. Anytime they use derogatory remarks, right? They curse you out, whatever, you can get all those taken down. There are a number, you can investigate the profile. Let's say they create a new profile and just you're the only review, or they're hitting all your competitors. You can get those types of reviews taken down. Unfortunately, the hardest ones to get taken down are the ones where they don't do any comment. They just leave a 1-star review and they don't say anything. Those are the hardest ones to combat. But there are some actions that you can take to, counter those.
All right, a couple of questions coming in from the audience, so let's address some of them. Chris, what are your thoughts on Google local ads? They've taken away a big share of organic business. How long will this last for?
Well, I hope it goes away tomorrow. I'll be an SEO guy, but that's a good question. The local service ads, they are doing very well for many of our clients. They're getting a low cost per acquisition. It's just difficult to rank in those positions, and how they determine rankings in the local service ads position is by region, so your location, response time, and reviews. Those three. That's how you rank in the local service ads. And also another tip there is if you have multiple addresses, you need to set up multiple local service ads accounts. Don't just try to do it off of one. That's a big one. I know it's a pain in the butt to go through that Pinkerton background check and all that stuff you got to go through, but that's a big one. And then the second part of that, organic there's less organic visibility, but I'll tell you this, Google cannot take away all the organic visibility, right? Because, other individuals would go to another search engine. So I think they're walking a really fine line. I saw that they were testing only 2 map positions instead of 3 and raising up organic. Now, what that means is it's more difficult to get into maps, but if you can get in one of those 2 positions, then your organic visibility has, it's worth more. But I think it's here to stay just because they have to compete. So someone like DuckDuckGo or Yahoo resurrects something, and they're going to compete. They're going to lower the ads that they force you to play on.
Looks like we had a follow-up question regarding these negative reviews. Let me just see if this is something that we could address. Is there any basis or procedure, maybe you could tell us the procedure, for compelling Google to remove an unintelligible negative review from someone who is not a client of a firm? So how does a lawyer actually do that?
So you can hit them up on Twitter. You can call you can ask for support once you're on. You contact somebody at Google Ads. The other thing that you can do is there's a flag that is next to the review. You can click that flag button and it gives you options of how to report the review. Those are some of the things you can do. It is a challenge. We've had a lot of success with Twitter. Very responsive there. You can also go to the Google Product Forum, submit your case to the Google Product Forum to have their contributors investigate it and or escalate it. So there's several things you can do. I would probably start with the flag. So go highlight your review and a little flag will pop up. And if that doesn't work, then I would go to the Google Product Forum and get the Google contributors to help assist you.
Great. Let's turn our attention to sort of the evolution of the practice of law, which now includes the business of practicing law. And coming through the pandemic as a financial service provider, we've seen a lot of firms over this last year sort of do an introspective, and many have been using this time when the courts are closed, where they're not litigating and trying cases, to change the way they're acquiring new business. And investing in digital marketing. And we saw a poll earlier, about half of the audience said that they generate new business through digital marketing, the other half still through referrals. And we're seeing the referral business sort of going down while the digital marketing case acquisition business has been increasing, right? Because I think some younger attorneys who embrace technology are getting some of the cases that, without digital marketing, may have been a referral case. So, Taylor, let me start with you. Maybe you could just talk about starting with the daily balancing act that you go through, where you have to dedicate financial resources to running your business, growing your business, financing your cases, and case acquisition. How do you approach that daily balancing act?
Yeah, it's funny that you say daily, because legitimately, right before we hopped on this, I was talking to one of the other lawyers here at our firm about this. So let's start with, in California, there is a chance that non-lawyers will be able to practice law. All right. So that is a chance that may happen. And when that day comes, we're all like, I'm sorry, we are. And unless you've got a massive advertising business, it's going to be very difficult. So you need to start figuring this stuff out now of how to strategically get your cases. 2, there are the massive advertisers that are out there that are truly law firms just for the purposes of advertising. And then they go and refer those cases out, and they're trying to take a 45 to 50% fee for, the pleasure of getting that case from them. And for those of us who are fronting the costs on these cases and risking getting nothing in return and paying for your law firm to function, to cut your fees in half, that's a kick in the teeth. That's really hard, and especially for law firms that are reputable and, aren't leaving their client with $1, after you take your fees and costs, and so it is something that we are really looking into and we are really aware of. We try to figure out, for example, if we are doing, let's just take, I don't know, maybe like one of our cases that we've got in Pennsylvania, where there was a doctor there that abused a bunch of children. We're trying to figure out, well, where are those targets? Where are the people that interacted with this doctor? It's a small town, it's a small community, so likely those people are still there. It's not like Los Angeles where everyone's transplants, everyone moves, everyone comes back, everyone's new. It's hard to target someone from something that happened to them when they were 6, versus in small towns, you can target them, and then it's trying to figure out, okay, but you're targeting them, but what is it? Are they computer savvy? Do they have Facebook? Do they have Instagram? Do they read the newspaper? Do they listen to radio ads? Do people have computers? I think a lot of us living in Southern California, especially like LA, Orange County, our assumption is everyone has a smartphone, everyone has a computer, and most people are reading, newspapers online. Well, that's a very small place, in comparison to the rest of the country. And so, for us, something that's important to do, and this might sound stupid, but I don't think a lot of people do it. Are you able to track where your stuff is coming from? So it was like Chris was talking about, okay, great. You go out and you do this, but how do you know, you do this radio ad, but how do you know if you got calls based on the radio ad so that then you can evaluate, okay, this is working or this is not? And then it's making the decision. Look, are these cases that you're targeting, are these $25,000 to $100,000 soft tissue cases? Are these, 1 million to 10 million brain injury cases? And so then, okay, to spend $30,000 in a month on, a certain ad to get one brain injury case that's going to get you between $1 million to $5 million, that's a pretty good deal. But to spend 30 grand that maybe will get you a $25,000 to $100,000 case probably doesn't make sense. And so, I think you have to be careful of that. And I think working, like Chris said too, and working with him, you don't want to use car accident. Like if that's your business, you got to figure out other words and phrases to use, because likely car accident, you'll never be able to afford it. I don't know, Chris, if you want to expand a little bit more on that, but that's one of the biggest issues that I see is using phrases or things that aren't specific enough. And so you're just going to get crushed financially. You're not going to get the traction that you're spending.
Yeah, 100%. So let's just define advertising what it is. Advertising is attention arbitrage. So what's that mean? If everybody's on TV, the cost to advertise on TV is going to go way up, and you're going to have less opportunity to generate an ROI there. But then if all the TV people go to YouTube or SEO, then the costs decline on TV. So it's a constant cycle of attention arbitrage. That's what it is. A percentage of people go to a community on TikTok or the newest social media platform. These are all just the communities where individuals congregate, and the prices will fluctuate. So there was a period of time where, print was just oversaturated. And now print, it's kind of nice to get a handwritten letter in the mail, and it's a way to stand out. So all these things come into play, the area of practice, your location, your level of investment, your level of risk tolerance. I also think that just referrals in themselves, there's a different strategy that you would take on business to consumer versus business to business. If you're an individual, say you're a killer attorney, right? You don't want to do the marketing stuff, but you are a great trial attorney. Maybe you want to advertise more on LinkedIn to showcase your expertise. Maybe you want to get on YouTube. Maybe you want to do more speaking engagements, do some CLEs, do some things like these to really showcase that you're, get on podcasts where you're talking about trials, and do the referral play. Be known as the person that will maximize a great case's value. And then there are other strategies for B2C. B2C, you're still going to see billboards. People still drive cars. People still watch TV. Now, your segments, I'm not a TV expert, but people watch live TV for sports. They watch it for news. There's all these different strategies. And again, it is just arbitrage. If you're in a city where if you're in, Jacksonville, next to Morgan and Morgan, and you want to do SEO, I don't know that car accident lawyer is something that you want to go head on, unless that maybe you're targeting Uber or Lyft, or you're targeting some different phrases to get in early. Now, eventually, after years of investing in your firm and building your brand, maybe you can go after those heavy hitting phrases, but it's very difficult to say because it depends on your practice area, your location, how big is your firm, and what are you doing? How can you leverage all those bodies for additional advertising opportunities, maybe grassroots marketing, things like that. But it's a tough one to say, but at the end of the day, it's just arbitrage. It is when people quit using Bing for Bing ads. Yeah, I know that Google has 95% of the market, but if you're the only person on Bing and you're bidding $10 a click, that might be a good opportunity.
Well, I think that's what's super important, is looking at what is it that you're trying to target. Is, like you said, are you just trying to target only other referrals because the referral lawyers know that if you take the case, you're going to get them the most amount? And so then maybe you don't really care about the Google search, SEO, maybe it's like you said, like maybe it's showing up and getting involved in organizations and speaking and talking about verdicts and things like that. I think though something, and I don't mean to sound patronizing, and it's not how I mean to come across, but I think this generation, the last couple of generations, having an email address that's not at AOL.com, that's, at Yahoo. I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'll tell you right now, if anyone Googles you and they come to your website and that's your email address, or they can't find a website, like to my generation, if you don't have a website, you don't exist. Like you live in a basement somewhere and you're not a real person, So as silly as some of that stuff sounds, I think you have to just have some of those basics that will also make a difference. My stepdad's a lawyer and he's a solo practitioner and he's 83 years old now, still practicing. And I'll never forget when my mom kind of started helping him and she was like, you need a website. She's like, when people refer you to other people and they go to Google you and they can't even find you, they're never going to then make the phone call. So whether it's a referral, whether it's a Google natural, just organic Google search, like those just simple, basic things, I think are just so important for success.
Yeah. And can I jump in here? All right. I just want to say something that kind of triggered what Taylor said. And I completely agree. And I kind of wanted to relate this to, a lemonade stand. When you're a kid and you're a young hustler, you're an entrepreneur, you got your lemonade stand. Well, back in the day, your location mattered. You'd be the only firm there. And you didn't have to differentiate because you're the only one existed. But now, due to the mobile device here, all lemonade stands, AKA law firms, are on the same street. And they're in the consumers, the palm of their hand. So how are you going to differentiate your law firm? What are you going to do to stand out? Because you're all on the same street now. In a lemonade stand, you might do frozen lemonade or green lemonade or Christmas lights or whatever. But when it comes to a law firm, there are some things that you could do. You can niche, right? You can be the expert in maritime law. There are things that you can do by showcasing a trial experience, these verdicts. There's different things, your willingness to go meet a person at their location, all these different things. You need to take those into consideration because it's no longer the day that, you have a location and it's everyone's on the same street when it comes to a law firm.
Chris, you mentioned brand before. There's a question from an attendee here. Do you agree that most law firms should not pay any money for brand awareness, rather spending marketing dollars on trackable and verifiable methods?
Oh my gosh, and I got to do brand. Branding's critical, and it's hard to quantify because if you're doing direct response marketing, pay-per-click, and SEO, you could or buying leads, you could say, I paid X, I got X return. Brand, it's one of those intangibles that not only helps from a conversion aspect, because even from an SEO perspective, let's say you were ranking in the 4th position, but you had a great brand, consumer may type it in and recognize your site and click on the 4th result just because they recognize you. They know you. It gets in that know, like, trust. Brand's critical. It's also going to play an important role when voice search becomes more prominent. They're not going to type in, hey Siri, what's car accident lawyer Los Angeles? They're going to say, find me the best car accident lawyer. And it's going to say, X firm has these reviews, and they're going to recognize it by brand. But I think brand it's critical for the top of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, and the bottom. That know, like, trust. I think Ed Herman here near Brown and Crouppen. I mean, look at what they're doing with their brand. The Ed Versus YouTube channel, the 3 lawyers eating sandwiches. I know it's kind of a long, drawn out answer, but I just think it's critical to always invest in your brand.
But here would be my question for a lawyer. What does a brand mean? I mean, we think of brands and we think of like tissue, it's called Kleenex or, things like that. But I mean, what is brand for lawyer?
That's a good question. A brand is if you're recognizable. And I think, in the funnel, the know, like, trust. I think brand is a lot about like. Do you like the people that are on the TV? That's why I think there's many successful campaigns that have attorneys on TV featuring their family. They're relatable versus the individuals on TV that are just yelling at the TV. And I think that, those individuals that want to be these killer trial attorneys that are frowning maybe aren't as approachable. Maybe some individuals don't want to work with them, but maybe they want to work with someone with a big smile on their face. I think brand is, are you recognizable? Are you trustworthy? I think those are some of the components that go into it, but it's kind of one of those intangibles though.
But don't you think too, that goes with the client reviews? And so brand is part of that as well. So, some people, and I know we do this, like we'll have like client testimonials that are actual visually, or we'll even have things where, you see us talking and like explaining something so that if you go on our website, even though you might not be talking with us, one-on-one, you can at least see us. And it's like, can you get that feeling, that, oh, she seems like a trustworthy person, or, oh, that's a person I want to have a beer with. Like, I feel comfortable calling them, and based on what we do, talking about something horrific that's happened to us. I've got a brain injury, or I've lost my child, or, I'm a paraplegic, or, whatever it may be, something horrible has happened. I want to talk to someone that looks relatable, or someone that might listen, or, just someone I feel comfortable with.
Yeah. And any buying decision has to have purchase intent, and purchase intent is if I buy this thing, is it going to make my life better? So I buy Benadryl because I have allergies right now and I'm dying with these allergies. It's going to make my life better, right? My Starbucks coffee, my Monster energy drink, it's going to make my life better. So I think all of those elements, when the consumer sees you, is it going to make my life better by working with this individual? If they think, this guy, I don't know that I'm going to really get along with them, it's probably not going to make my life better. I think that's what it's about when it comes to purchase intent. And I think there are these psychological triggers when people come to a website. They don't even know that they're occurring, but if they see all the reviews and the case results and the testimonials, and they see your video and you're approachable, and I think that all of those play a big important factor when it comes to advertising and marketing.
So sticking with this sort of theme, there were two questions that came in from the registrants that I'm going to tie together. Chris, maybe you could provide some tips on using paid Google and Facebook. And also, can you use Facebook paid ads to retarget those who are searching for lawyers on Google?
All right. So fair warning, these are not my extreme area of expertise. I have been Google Ads certified for 3 years. I've managed some very large campaigns, but it's not my core competency, but I'll take a stab at it. Google Ads, you can, what are some of the tips? So some of the basics, you need to bid on your branded, your firm name, your individual attorney names, because there's very low cost to those, and you want to take control of your real estate that you've already established through your brand and reputation. That's critical. That's number one. Those are very inexpensive. The rest of that is very challenging. If it is personal injury lawyer and car accident lawyer, when these cost per click's $300 a click, it can be really challenging. And I would say, in terms of tips, you need to split test your ads. You need to make sure you have landing pages for pay-per-click that are designed to convert, as opposed to long form for SEO. For SEO, you need really robust, lots of words on the page for Google to crawl. For pay-per-click, they need to be short, snappy, highlight, contact form above the fold and try to capture those leads immediately. Those are some basic tips, but honestly, I'm not the best when it comes to Google Ads. Yes, you can absolutely retarget on Facebook. That's a tremendous strategy. That's probably the only strategy that I would use for personal injury, and I keep referring to personal injury because that's my level of area expertise. Now, if you're doing, let's say, mass torts, absolutely do a lead gen play. Bid on Zantac and AFFF and some of these other cases. That can be a good lead gen strategy. There are some excellent companies out there that can help you out in those areas.
Great. Taylor, back to you. Maybe you could talk about where your law firm is going when it comes to growth and case acquisition.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something that we talk about every day and try to figure out. And I work with children because they're trying to interrupt me right now. My partners are coming in through my office door. No, I mean, we talk about it all the time because it's, you're trying to figure out, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're a business. We absolutely love what we do. We love representing survivors, but you have to decide, are you taking every single one single victim case that comes in your door? Or are you taking only mass actions where you've got 100+ victims? You're trying to, are we going to take, we're here in Orange County, but are we taking cases in New York? Are we taking cases in Texas? Like what are we doing? And we have cases all across the country, but we have to look at what's going to allow us to continue to practice. And it's tough and it's hard. And, we have to have those tough conversations of, this just might not be the right case for us to take on. And that's heartbreaking. And, you talk about the person that you turn down, that you don't take their case. And I hate doing that. I don't want to do that. But, if I don't do that, then we won't be here to represent anyone because we'll be under, and so it's tough. And, this balancing act too of, I think it's really important to recognize, what can your firm handle? You don't need every single case. Unless, that's what you're doing, unless you are truly a mill of just, churning and burning. Unfortunately for us, we can't churn and burn sex abuse cases. We have got to litigate them for a long period of time. So I can't have 100 cases. I just can't do it. And we don't want to have a firm of 100 lawyers. That's not who we are. So you go back to your brand. It's a very important conversation, not just brand awareness, but business awareness with your brand. Who are you? What are you looking to do? And how can you be the absolute best at what you're doing? And I think that's what allows your business to stay successful.
Chris, we're seeing that the elite law firms are using what we call smart money. They've decided that they no longer have to be a counselor and a creditor to their clients. So they're financing their case costs more and more. It's permissible according to the rules of ethics, and allows the law firms to go toe-to-toe with the defendants who have the deep pockets. So as we see more and more law firms turning to smart money and financing, are you seeing an uplift in law firms spending marketing dollars throughout the pandemic?
Yes. So I would say, the most successful firms that we work with continue to put their foot on the on the pedal. And I think it was a big opportunity for those because, what other time in the last 10 to 15 years did your law firms just quit advertising? And it's a tremendous way to stand out. The other thing is, I think that just the level of investment when it comes to advertising is there's a lot of asterisks there. And I think if you're bare minimum 10% of your top line needs to go to marketing. If you're growth minded, it needs to be more 15%. If it's less than 10%, you better have a really dialed in strategy or have maybe been around for a long time where the brand already exists, because it's an unfortunate but you have to invest in your marketing. It can't be an afterthought. And again, I would say a minimum 10% in your top line.
Well, and I would think too, I would say, like working with people like Ari makes a huge difference because you can sit down and discuss, let's look at my business plan. Let's look at what I'm trying to do. Let's talk about, what kind of financing. And then if you look at what your loan is, okay, but what's that percentage that I'm paying back on that loan versus what did it then just generate me in terms of new cases? And I think that's what's hugely important, is to be able to have those conversations and truly look at it, because, it's just like with anything, like the point of you're investing money into yourself and your firm. And so it's what's that return on investment. So, I think it's worth it. You have to, unless you're on your way out and or you've got this bitchin' referral source, then you probably shouldn't be on this panel anyway, listening. So good for you. Congrats.
Terrific. Well, I guess we have time for maybe one or two more questions that the audience has submitted. And for those questions which we didn't answer, there were a couple of very general questions. Chris, Taylor, and myself will try to address those questions privately after the conclusion of the webinar. Chris, does organic ranking through SEO reduce CPA for Google PPC?
CPA would be cost per acquisition. So your cost per acquisition is going to be dramatically different no matter what channel you use. And it's a number that you need to be aware of, because that's the attention arbitrage I was talking about, and where you want to put your money, particularly when it comes to direct response advertising versus brand.
Fantastic. Well, that about wraps it up for today. Again, I'm sorry we didn't get to answer all of your questions, but there were so many great questions, and hopefully we were providing some really good quality information to you. We are going to be, we have been recording this webinar, and we're going to be publishing a recording of this webinar for those of you who want to watch it again or share it with others in your firm. So I want to thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the conversation helpful and enjoyable. We dropped today's panelists' contact information into the chat window, along with where you can find the recording for this webinar session. The video will be available within the next 48 hours, so be sure to check after that time. Taylor, Chris, it was really a pleasure having this conversation with you. I can't thank you enough. I wish you only the best, and I can't wait to see you in person at an upcoming conference. Until then, thank you very much.
Thanks, Hari. Thanks, Taylor.
Bye, guys.